You're watching TSN, the sports network, coast to coast. Eye on the Diamond is brought to you by Labatt Blue. Honest and true. You bet. It's blue.
Go on.
Only one other player in the history of the game to hit the ball like that.
My curveball is better, my changeup is better.
Oh, sweet. That's going to get him in, too. All right. Let groove, Larry.
Character, makeup, and mental approach is very important to us because it isn't a short season. It isn't 8 or 12 or 14 football games. It's 162 games, and so those relationships can really deteriorate if you don't have the proper attitude.
When I know something is wrong in a clubhouse, I remember I used to get up and speak up because nobody was like to go out there and take charge on it. And I used to take charge and tell people the way it's supposed to be done.
The individuals that they were booing, they went from the players to the manager. And basically, I was happy about that because I could handle the boos. They started really booing me good, which was okay. They paid their money. That didn't really bother me. And actually, I'd rather have them boo me than boo the players because at least they could go out and play relaxed.
I'm saying you're almost envious of the fact you're going, oh, listen, you know, you go out there, you shoot at the Indians for years, you shoot at them, and then finally, when you think the war is over, these guys come in with bombs and just blow them up. You know, one day when we took 7 years of fighting.
There were no more deserving fans in the Blue Jays. They had always been close, they've always been good, but never got over to the mountaintop, and we did it.
I spent half the year watching these guys march towards the inevitable, the World Series, and I mean, it was tough. It was tough once again not playing, but even tougher watching these guys having all this success and without me.
I saw Peter Caviglia running back, and I'm looking at him going, this ball may be out of here. It may be out of here.
I actually went out to shake Mollitz's hand, and he had tears in his eyes. That'll let make tears come to my eyes because I know how hard and all the pain and all the late nights and hard work these guys have put into it to win.
So when we got there, it was kind of the result of some magic plan that we had written out and been able to actually fulfill. I mean, it was like saying, this is what we're going to do and going out and doing it.
Not far from the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico
A rite of spring for Canadian baseballers has occurred each March now for 18 years. With consecutive world championships and wide recognition as the game's top organization, the Toronto Blue Jays wear their celebrity with a comfortable assurance. Since landing in baseball's American League in 1977, the Jays have come annually to Dunedin, Florida, investing 30-odd days in anticipation of April's first pitch. Spring training affords an opportunity to compare notes and renew the exuberance of youth that binds a team. Keeping loose is virtually an art form. The players, young and old, are all here for the same reason, to show they belong. Baseball's a numbers game. Statistics mean everything. Everyone knows what the guy next to them is doing. No one forgets that a multi-million-dollar business looms over the game.
You're coming straight in. Just throwing the ball to you.
Airball's better and change it was better.
Yeah, I think so. Think about it.
All right, I will.
I want to hit in group 1 and 2. I need some extra swings today, man. 1 and 2? On your feet, shrug backwards. So deep. All right, I want to hit by myself. Everybody else shag, okay? What's wrong? You ain't got no pull?
Clowning around makes the game that much easier.
This isn't, Toronto Downs High School, whatever the place you went to.
Only proven performers can truly relax in the spring.
You got good defense, man. Turn it back. New York gonna choke. They don't have starts, and them young boys can't hold on.
The game of baseball can be cruel. Young men, by most definitions, the experienced ball player can be rudely confronted with the truth of his athletic mortality. Though there is a veneer of fun, for the Blue Jay players, staying on top is plain old hard work.
Hey, you got 30 seconds, man. 8 swings to go. Got a baby's eyes. Let's go pick him up. Let's go, Mingy. You hit these balls, pick them up. Let's go.
7 minutes, man.
Hey, that's just how that clock even. I got you, big man. First pitch is thrown, then you started. I'm gonna wait till you start hitting, Joe. I'm gonna forget about the front. Oh. Get him over.
By winning more games than any other team for nearly a dozen years now, the Jays have built a legion of fans from coast to coast in Canada. It doesn't stop there. The Jays possess a front office steeped in the game's finer points. The system with an uncanny knack for unearthing and developing young talent. All of the acumen is fueled by the financial clout of sold-out houses at Skydome. One look tells you the Toronto Blue Jays exude success. It's not surprising then, as opening day approaches, everyone wants to beat Toronto. At the heart of the Jays' achievements lies General Manager Pat Gillick. Spending a lifetime in baseball, he's carved out a reputation that others are still chasing.
Dr. Brown, President of the American League.
Having tutored as a scout with Houston and the Yankees, Gillick arrived just in time to lead Toronto into the '76 expansion draft that sent the Blue Jays one direction and Seattle's Mariners another. Gillick is preparing to close a chapter in the club's short but successful history. At season's end, he will retire with Cooperstown somewhere in his future. The Jays have now posted 11 consecutive winning seasons, 3 straight more than anyone else. Today, it's no secret that there are few better places to be in baseball than Toronto, where pre-game ceremony can be unmistakably Canadian.
All right. Go.
April 7th, 1977. And as Bill Singer delivered a strike to Chicago's Ralph Garr, Major League Baseball came to Toronto. Reconfirming America's opinion of Canadian weather, April this day was more like January. The game was in jeopardy. But by 1:30 in the afternoon, undaunted, a huge crowd filled Exhibition Stadium.
I'll tell you, that first game, you know, I never thought we were going to play, and I know Peter told me that we've got 40-some thousand people in here, and we're not going to let them get out. So I knew at that time, be it rain or sleet or snow, whatever it might be, that we were going to play this one.
As the Jays gingerly took to the icy field, a curious White Sox club readied themselves. Blue Jay first baseman Doug Ault vividly recalls the opening day.
The next thing you know is about, I don't know, an hour before the game, 45 minutes before the game, we walk out and there's 40,000 people in the stands. And there's no way we're not going to play this game, you know. So it was an experience.
Having navigated the ice of Maple Leaf Gardens for years, the 48 Highlanders were more at home than the ball players. And after Canada's Snowbird completed the anthems, the game got underway. Equipped with a cast of discards from the rest of baseball, Toronto manager Roy Hartsfield would be in for a long season. And just in case he had any doubts, the White Sox put across 2 runs before the Jays had even picked up a bat. When slugger Richie Zisk clubbed a long home run to center field, the boisterous crowd fell silent. Enter Doug Ault. His home run followed 2 Blue Jay strikeouts in the first inning. The applause wouldn't stop.
Now, I didn't know what to do. All I did was I just tipped my hat. I didn't know what else to do. You know, thank you for yelling. You know, hope you stay this positive when I'm going bad.
Doug Ault hit a second home run that day, and with it, forever found a warm place in the memories of Blue Jay fans. The smiles being sported on faces were a sign of things to come. 18 years later, the Chicago White Sox were again in town. But that's where the parallel ends. The Blue Jays franchise today alone is valued at several $100 million. A far cry from the $7 million that was put up by John Labatt Limited to launch the club in 1977. The Jays now boast a star-laden lineup that has become part of the sport fan's lexicon. Different than 77's gaggle of nondescript players whose names escape most of us. The Jays have matured into one of the dominating clubs in baseball. And in their growth, they've made an indelible imprint on America's game. Blue Jays won on that cold opening day in 1977. And they've chronicled a wealth of history ever since.
The the Diamond is brought to you by Dodge Trucks, reinventing the truck.
Those first few years were filled with the excitement that only an expansion club can bring. With flashes of deft execution and precocious acts of daring, the Blue Jays gained a certain novelty in Toronto. And though they lost far more than they won, the new team brought a smile to those who took an interest. In the late 70s, more than 4.5 million fans found a seat at Exhibition Stadium. They came to know their heroes well. Otto Velez, Big John Mabry, Demo Garcia, Barry Bonnell, and probably the best of them, shortstop Alfredo Griffin. Through a combination of drafts and waivers and trades of drafts and waivers, the Jays concocted a formula for succeeding a clear third of the time. Enough to put you in the Hall of Fame if you're a player, but somewhat less than hoped for by manager Roy Hartsfield.
Roy had worked in the Dodgers system for a period of time and knew the way they operated. And we kind of really patterned ourselves either after the Royals or the Dodgers. And so I think Roy knew what the game plan was.
Bob Baylor, the club's first draft pick in November of '76, remembers the Hartsfield game plan.
I think Roy was a no-nonsense type manager, and he was trying to do it with discipline. I remember he wouldn't let us go in the clubhouse during the game. And there wasn't a lot of heat in that dugout, Exhibition Stadium. The wind blew right in there, and if you weren't playing, it got pretty darn cold. But that was part of his theory, to have the team as a unit, be on the field as a unit, and win or lose as a team.
And lose they did. More than 300 games the first 3 years alone. Yet there was an endearing quality to the team's often inept performance. If there was a new way to lose, the Jays found it. There was center fielder Rick Bossetti, who, much to his manager's chagrin, developed a flair for the dramatic, on occasion swallowing fly balls with a basket catch.
I ended a game with one, and we were at home, and it was a game we won, and Roy was waiting for me at the top of the dugout, or at the dugout when I come running off the field, and he goes, "Young man," he says, "don't ever drop one." I said, "Okay, Roy."
By the 1980 season, the Blue Jays sought a new manager to marshal the budding young talent Gillick had been assembling. At 64 years young, Bobby Matic became the game's oldest rookie manager.
Then the greatest and the gutsiest move of them all, making Bobby Matic the manager in 1980. And what did that achieve? It achieved the best teacher of baseball, teaching at the major league level to guys who maybe should have been in AAA or AA, and I don't want to be unfair to them, but that's maybe where they should have been learning, and they were learning at the major league level. They were going to the park early. They were doing repetition, 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 because that's the way Matic does it. 3 more, 3 more, 3 more. Well, 3 more never ends for him. 3 more can mean 100 more threes, so all of a sudden you're at 300 of the same thing.
With nearly 50 years of baseball behind him, Matic proved reluctant.
Pat kept insisting that I should take it in my kind, and I don't know. My wife told me I was nuts, and everybody did, but I enjoyed it. In fact, when they let me go in 81, I wanted to stay on, but they thought I shouldn't.
From a development standpoint, Bobby, I knew, could bring these players along, and he was the type of guy that would work with these players, would lead these players, would develop these players in the Blue Jay mode.
One of Matic's star pupils was Lloyd Mosby, the club's first draft pick in 1978. Still a teenager when arriving in Toronto, he was literally bursting with athletic ability. It was Matic's driven approach that would make Lloyd Mosby realize his potential.
I thought he was a guy who was always screaming and never was satisfied, and, you know, And he wasn't, and that was good because I wasn't an outfielder. I was a first baseman and a catcher, so I had a lot to learn. He knew that, and he knew what kind of time span he had. I didn't know that, and the things that he saw that I wasn't doing quickly, I mean, it didn't sit well with him. I mean, I remember he hit me 100 balls, fly balls, and he was more tired than I was, though. We finally talked about this stuff years later, and he was killing himself, 99. So it hurt him too. So we both was hurt that day.
Matic's unyielding devotion to youth, not surprisingly, brought with it clashes.
I wasn't even close to being in Bobby's plans. He knew what he wanted to do with Lloyd. And when I broke my arm in '80, that opened the door. But in the following spring, when I'm coming back, Bobby was out in the outfield. I don't know if Lloyd will remember this. And he was working with him on Bobby's work. And I came out and said, Lloyd, here, let me show you how I do this. Because he was, you know, that little slide pop-up backhand catch I used to do. And I tried to explain it, and Bobby turned to me and says, why don't you get out of here? Don't listen to anything he turns to Lloyd. Don't listen to anything he has to say to you, and you do it my way. I wasn't telling him which way to do it. I was just saying I've had a lot of success doing it like this. And, you know, that kind of was emotionally and mentally for me. I knew that I was done in Toronto.
The Matic era was also marked by the unlikely discovery of a college outfielder who was pitching for an injured teammate. Dave Stieb will never forget the day fate came calling in the person of Bobby Matic.
Bobby Matic and Al Lamacchia were at the game. They called me over and said they liked the way I pitched and this and that. And I said, well, I'm not a pitcher. I'm just helping these guys out. I'm an outfielder, you know, hit and throw and run and catch the ball. And they said, yeah, but we like the way you pitch. We want you to pitch.
And he just was a natural. He had a tough, hard slider, great competitor, hard worker.
And they said, well, if we drafted you, would you consider pitching?
He thought he could be a outfielder, but I didn't like his swing at all. Some people thought he should play it out as an outfielder.
I said, yeah, sure, if you draft me, I would pitch. And I didn't think they'd draft me, but sure enough, they did. And they were right. It was the quickest way to the majors.
So I said, you ought to thank us for making you a pitcher, because you never would have made it the way you swung the ball.
Steve's nasty slider, along with his burning desire, made him a pitcher with few peers, with an attitude few could match.
I knew I was good. I was winning, and I was throwing well, and I had so much confidence it was ridiculous, and they all thought when I came up I was cocky, but I wasn't cocky. I was confident. I wasn't really arrogant or anything like that, and also I was a perfectionist, so I expected myself to pitch well and win.
But Steve's passion for perfection was sometimes thrust upon teammates who didn't possess his talent. The dark fire that opponents so dreaded could, on occasion, get the better of Dave Stieb.
I had a hard time controlling it, concealing it, and that was probably my downfall as far as if anything was going to get to me, it was going to be that. But I think I did just good enough living on the edge with it.
Stieb was much better, recording 174 wins as a Blue Jay, many of them with poor teams. In Bobby Matic's second and final year as skipper in 1981, the Blue Jays began to earn the respect of their baseball brethren. The second half of a strike-shortened season saw the team win nearly as many as they lost. Now, with an abundance of young talent in their system, the 80s held the promise of a contending team.
Eye on the Diamond is brought to you by Castrol, the manufacturers of Castrol GTX, the oil engineered for today's harder-working engine.
He's had some arm problems. Malloy.
The Scouts, baseball's unsung heroes.
Fourth from the bottom.
Today, the Jays literally scour the world in search of the next generation. It all comes down to the amateur draft. Baseball futures can be won and lost in a moment.
They're both short.
Pat Gillick's organization is at ease with the odds.
Our scouts are able to evaluate the players from a physical standpoint. Their skills on the field, can they hit, can they run, can they throw, you know, what kind of fastball they have. The problem they run into is knowing what kind of person he is. Does he fit in with our ball club? Does he have the right chemistry? Does he have the right desire? Is he a guy that's team-oriented, or is he a fellow that's selfish? Is he a fellow that's coachable? Is he a guy that's got mental toughness? Does he have a lot of self-confidence? You know, there's a lot of aspects that, you know, go into making a good player, and the mental part, especially at the major league level, is very, very important.
Bob Engel, the team's director of scouting, has worked at Gillick's side since day one. Few know the general manager better.
He has great instinct for scouting, and I think he has been there due to the simple fact that he has been in the field himself. There's something there that he has that separates him from most of your general managers at this time, and the fact that he is a baseball person.
The Dominican Republic, a land alive with baseball. The names of the great players from here conjure images not soon forgotten. The high leg kick of Juan Marichal, the swift bats of Cesar Cedeno and Rico Carty. Each honed his craft on dusty sandlots that are never quiet. Poor by most definitions of the word, the Dominican Republic is fertile ground for summer's pastime. Baseball carries with it a glimpse of the American dream in a place where hope can be fleeting. Most of Major League Baseball scouts the Dominican, though few teams have had the success of the Toronto Blue Jays. Here, a Pat Gillick scouting trip headlines the sport pages. In tandem with head Latin American scout Epi Guerrero, Gillick continues to mine the country for hidden talent.
They think he's a small guy to be a catcher, to me and Domingo.
With the Astros, Gillick quickly recognized the native Dominican's keen eye and his passion for the game. Together, the two have capitalized on the country's unfathomed depth of baseball genius.
They love the game. They'll play the game day in and day out. I think that's the one thing that's happened, you know, in North America, is the fact that a lot of our young people, they don't practice as much as they should, you know, but you got to play ball every day. You got to be involved in it every day, and that's what happens, you know, in Latin America. These people play baseball like baseball was played maybe in North America 20 years ago.
While there is a lyrical amateurishness to these players at first glance, a closer look reveals a persevering commitment to the game they love. They are not at all shy about taking the very field on which their heroes performed. Alfredo Griffin, Damaso Garcia, George Bell. If there has ever been a born natural, it was Tony Fernandez. His long, supple frame handled ground balls with embarrassing ease. Gillick knew instantly this was his shortstop.
Tony could just do things as a kid that no one else could do. He probably read a ground ball, you know, better than anyone I ever saw. So immediately when I saw Tony, I said, if he doesn't hit with his speed and with his arm and his fielding ability, he's going to play in the major league. So he's a guy right away. I said, major league.
Fernandez did hit, but it was his glove and those long looping throws that endured. George Bell had originally been with Philadelphia. With a history of injury problems at an early age, he was left unprotected. Gillick grabbed him.
George certainly had all the physical, you know, capabilities, but you never know. It's the makeup, and George certainly had the makeup. I mean, George was one of those guys you either love or you hate him, but George was a winner, and George didn't want to embarrass himself, and George had a lot of pride.
George Bell brought his own brand of baseball to the Toronto Blue Jays. Armed with an outspoken attitude, Bell was, at one and the same time, loved by his teammates and despised by opponents. Like Fernandez, Bell honed his game on the fields of San Pedro de Macorís in the Dominican Republic. He would become the club's most productive hitter in the 1980s. With George Bell, actions spoke louder than words, though it was sometimes close.
Well, I create my style right from the beginning when I started playing with the Phillies. I was hard players. I always play real hard. For me, it was like those Kentucky Derby horses, you know, the baby horses. When you train those horses, they run, and working pretty much, you know, all the way to pass out. That was me when I was coming up.
Bell was only one part of an exciting young club that Pat Gillick was building in Toronto. The general manager plucked first baseman Willie Upshaw from the Yankees. He would be the first Jay to drive in over 100 runs soon after. Right fielder Jesse Barfield combined home run power with defensive proficiency. He became a regular. With pitching anchored by Steve and hard-throwing Jim Clancy, the arrival of no-nonsense manager Bobby Cox suggested newfound prosperity for Toronto. Cox brought a peppery demeanor from Atlanta in time to take over the Jays for the 1982 season. He immediately had the respect of the clubhouse.
Bobby Cox, one of the greatest. I think Cox bring the unique style with the Toronto Blue Jay organization how to win.
I mean, this guy came, man, he was a bulldog, man. You'll never, ever be able to explain what he did for this organization. You'll never.
Bobby Cox was my favorite manager that I ever played for, and I felt the best manager I played for.
He was a man without an ego. I mean, Cox had no ego. There's no question about it. I mean, he wanted the players up front. He wanted the coaches up front. He didn't want to deal with the press. That was a necessary evil, a part of the game for him. All he wanted to do was make sure that the team was as well trained and as well equipped to go out and win games. And you could see that things start to turn around.
Development was fine, but Bobby Cox's intention was to win.
I thought they had a lot of good young players, and knowing that Pat was at the helm, I knew we were going to get more good players too. And I know they had a lousy season in '81, like a lot of ball clubs, but Pat felt very adamantly that, you know, the ball club was capable of winning maybe 85 games that very year in '82, and we came close to that.
The 1982 Blue Jays finished a mere 6 games below 500. And for the first time, they managed to catch someone, locking the Cleveland Indians in a tie for 6th place in the powerful American League East. In part, the success traced to platooning. It was simple. Ernie Whitt would start against right-handers. Buck Martinez would face the left-handed pitcher. At third base, it was the same. Rance Mullenix and Garth Orge split the playing time. Cox's platooning system found its strength in getting everyone on the field. And though the Jays weren't ready to contend for a pennant, there was never any doubt where they were headed.
Eye on the Diamond, brought to you by Esquire Watch. Esquire Watch, it has your name on it.
By 1983, the Jays found themselves in an actual pennant race. A year later, they finished in second to the Tigers. The organization's young talent was maturing under the leadership of Bobby Cox. One of the club's few veterans was catcher Buck Martinez.
People don't realize or remember how good the '83, '84 teams were before we won, before we had a chance to win. because 83 was an excellent team, 84 was a very good team, and finally 85 we broke through.
The Blue Jays owed much of their new success to the bat of George Bell. The same could not be said of his fielding. Bell's version of left field has, over time, evolved from point of contention to that of burlesque recollection. And though he was probably better defensively than was his due, wherever George and his glove went, controversy wasn't far behind. The 85 Jays boasted diligent coaching. Al Widmar handled the pitchers, and future managers Jimmy Williams and Cito Gaston would spend hours of extra time throwing BP. Dave Steed looks back fondly on 85.
85 was probably the most exciting year that I ever played with that organization. And it was very rewarding to make it to the playoffs, you know, the first playoffs in Blue Jay history.
Steed was the ace of a formidable pitching corps. Tom Filer and Dennis Lamp combined for 18 wins without a loss. The crafty Doyle Alexander won 17. Jimmy Key gave the team a top left-handed starter for the first time. And though free agent Bill Caudle failed, the closer the team had been lacking was found. Jimmy Key remembers.
When Tom came aboard, you know, he made, you know, all the starters better, obviously. You know, you turned the ball over and you knew the game was over. You know, those early years, he never blew a save.
Henke joined the Jays in mid-season, saving 13 games. Soon known as the Terminator, he helped defeat Billy Martin's Yankees. The Yanks sported high-priced stars like Dave Winfield and Ricky Henderson. Though the Jays showed the strain of holding first place since early June, the young club responded, beating the Pinstripers in 5 of 7, right in New York, and put themselves in position to clinch their division on the season's final weekend. Record crowds turned out at Exhibition Stadium, with the Jays needing a solitary win. In only their 9th year, the Jays were on the threshold of a championship. On Saturday, October the 5th, they'd have their first.
I was hoping and praying, God, you know, they can hit the fly ball to me so I can get down on my knee and thank you, God, for, you know, for giving me the opportunity to catch a fly ball and to win. And that was one of the greatest feelings I ever have in my life.
George Bell's catch set off a mad celebration, the kind that those more acquainted usually reserve for the end of October and a World Series triumph. The Jays would face the Kansas City Royals for the American League pennant. The prospect of being part of history no doubt ensured the attendance of then Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. Game 1 saw the Blue Jays go to their top starter. Dave Steed didn't allow a Royals runner past second base, and Toronto's offense counted 5 runs by the 3rd inning. The Jays cruised to an easy 6-1 win. The second game was much closer. With the two teams trading runs and the lead several times, the play took on a feverish intensity. By late in the game, it was clear that one mistake would determine the outcome. Down in extra innings, Al Oliver's game-winning hit off Dan Quisenberg catapulted the delirious Jays to Missouri, up 2 games. George Brett may have been the best player of his generation. And the Jays were about to find out why. Though Toronto led early and was playing well, Brett single-handedly brought the Royals back from the brink of elimination, knocking out 4 hits, 2 of them homers. The Royals were back in the series. Two nights later, it was up to Al Oliver again. His pinch hit double in the 9th put the Jays a victory from a World Series berth. With 3 shots to get a win, losing Game 5 in KC was bearable. But when George Brett's home run in Game 6 sent the series to the limit, the Jays were in trouble. Lloyd Mosby hasn't forgotten the deciding game.
We were tight. We had lost. We had no chance that day because there was no intensity. It was a feeling of nervousness. You know, we had blown it. We should have won it in Kansas City. Wasn't meant to be.
When Jim Sundberg's fly ball hit the wall, so too did Blue Jay fortunes.
To go out there and have that game unfold the way it did was a nightmare. It was unbelievable. It was like it wasn't happening. It all happened in slow motion. And then I was losing, and all our hopes and dreams of that season and the past 5 years just gone. It was devastating.
The Jays reflected on what might have been.
I can remember Mosby and Willie Upshaw walking in, and we all walking together, and Upshaw putting his arms around me, just bawling like babies. We were all just so devastated. It was such a sad time. But right then, I think we all recognized how much effort it took, how meaningful it was to be considered a World Championship quality ball club, and we hadn't gone that far yet.
Manager Bobby Cox still looks back on the '85 loss with painful amazement.
That series hurt about as bad as any series I've ever been involved in. You know, we've been beaten now twice in the World Series here with the Braves, but that series stands out more so because I thought we could have won it, and the city in Toronto was wanting to win it so badly.
Were we happy we lost? Of course we weren't. Were we despondent? No, we weren't despondent either because we knew that we could go on a little bit further. Only one exception, and that was Pat. Pat knew how difficult it was to get there, and I could see the look in his and the resignation and the sadness of us not winning.
Gillick had another concern. The catalyst in the club's ascension was returning to his hometown of Atlanta.
When Ted Turner called for permission, you know, my wheels started spinning because I certainly didn't want to leave, and I had absolutely no reason to leave, and certainly wouldn't have left for any other ball club in America if it hadn't been in my hometown.
Jimmy Williams became the Jays' 4th field manager less than a month after the loss to Kansas City.
Thanks to Pat, I was given an opportunity originally to be a coach and then given the opportunity to manage at the major league level. It certainly maybe was a tough situation coming in after the first Eastern Division championship, but I accepted that challenge when I said yes, I'd like to manage the ball club.
The Jays would never recover from a disastrous start. The things that came so easily during the '85 season now were a source of constant frustration. Toronto finished a disheartening 4th. Jimmy Williams' rookie year had been a victim of the club's poor pitching. His ace won only 7 games. The Blue Jays vowed that 1987 would be different. And Williams and his team undertook play with a fiery determination. The Jays were struggling to prove they were one of the best teams in baseball. Jimmy Key's 17 wins contributed to that cause.
In '87, I really had my best year in the big leagues. I still look upon that as probably my best year from start to finish. And yeah, I was, you know, that was basically when I got on the map and was a guy that the Blue Jays could count on.
Toronto's relief pitching was superb, led by Tom Henke. The bullpen included Mark Eichhorn, left-hander David Wells, and a young Dwayne Ward. The Blue Jays' offense centered on what some were dubbing the best outfield in baseball. Bell, Garfield, and Mosby combined for over 100 home runs and 300 RBIs. Kelly Gruber cracked the lineup. Rookie Fred McGriff hit 20 home runs. So potent was the offense that in one game they socked a record 10 home runs, 3 of them by Ernie Whitt. Pennant fever again gripped the Jay faithful. The Blue Jays held down first place with 10 games to play. Arch rival Detroit was second. Fate would play a role. Bill Madlock's hard slide into second felled Tony Fernandez, cracking his elbow. He would be out for the season. Lloyd Mosby can readily awaken the drama of the '87 showdown between the Jays and the Detroit Tigers.
If they get tapes of the series in Toronto and the series in Detroit, you don't need playoffs or World Series that year. That's all a bunch of extra. Because the playoffs and World Series was played within those two. It was the most unbelievable games I've ever played in my life. Stressful, ain't the word. Every little mistake you made, you paid for it.
The Jays had made few mistakes all year. With 3 games against Milwaukee before heading to Detroit, they figured to have the division in hand. Then, against the Brewers, Ernie Whitt injured his ribcage. Toronto had to play the final series without 2 of its starters. It wasn't long before Detroit shared first place. Saturday's second game saw the Tigers' Jack Morris and the Jays' Mike Flanagan hook up in a pitcher's duel. The score was locked into extra innings until Alan Trammell's ground ball went through a drawn in infield. The Jays suddenly found themselves needing a win just to force a playoff. On the season's final day, both Jimmy Key and Frank Tanana threw with precision. An early Detroit home run would be the only blemish on Key's brilliant effort. Most days his start would be enough to win. But Toronto was unable to score a run. The Tigers had swept the weekend series, and almost incredibly, the Jays had lost their 7th straight game.
That's one of the biggest pain in my life, still staying inside. I cannot believe it. I cannot believe we lost 7 games on the roll. 7 games straight. 7 games on the roll. I'm talking about straight with the team we have.
George Bell's fine season made him American League MVP. But Toronto's collapse suggested changes were coming.
George Bell was an outstanding player and played hard and played to win and wanted to win. The only thing that we tried to do, when I say we, the organization, is he got to the point sometimes where he had some injuries.
They try to take more production out of myself, take him out of the outfield, only to be a hitter. And sometimes you cannot do that with the players. That was my concern when I was out there. That's why we had that big argument in 1988.
The Jays met with Bell to outline their desire that he become the club's full-time designated hitter.
He agreed to it in this meeting. And Pat Gillick and Beeston and Lamacchia, and there were several people there with George and his agents. Right after I finished talking, he says, yeah, that's fine. Now let's talk about the cake, meaning his salary.
But by the time training camp rolled round, Bell had a change of heart. After all, he was the league's most valuable player. Things got bitter.
Maybe it was a pride factor with him. And that's okay, I understand that. And all I was trying to do was look at him from a longevity standpoint, from a contributing standpoint.
On opening day in 1988, DH George Bell hit 3 home runs. He went home that day without talking to anyone. Not long after, the Jays relented and Bell was back in his familiar left field position. But the damage was done. The fans grew to resent Bell's attitude more than his inconsistent play. He was roundly booed.
I was asking to a Toronto fan a little bit more than I expect. And I don't know, they take sometimes the wrong way because sometimes they quote me really bad. I remember a couple writers, you know, they really misquote me every time. I don't know why.
The most famous quote had Bell allegedly telling the Boo Birds to kiss his purple butt.
He write it like that because he wanted to write it like that. And that's the only way they can sell paper, because Toronto paper and the city is a soap opera. Whatever you do good for the city, whatever you do good for business, stuff like that, people trying to hide that. But when you make something like a scandal or something like that, they be selling paper for 1, 2, 3 weeks.
It was never the same for George Bell in Toronto.
It's unfortunate in a lot of ways that he has the reputation, because if you knew him and got to see the warmth that is there and the loyalty that's there, I mean, he's a special person. George Bell was a guy that could go 0 for 4, and if we won, be happy. Not a lot of guys like that. 4 for 4, and we lose, and George is upset. George measured the success of the Toronto Blue Jays higher than he measured his own successes.
The controversy dogged the team through an uninspired season. Through it all, Bell vowed that he'd outlast his manager in Toronto, and while Williams' departure early in the '89 campaign proved him right, George would not be far behind. Williams was dismissed in May as the club slumped. Batting coach Cito Gaston became the new manager.
Paul said to me, well, we just fired Jimmy. And I was quite shocked. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, we just fired him. He says, you're surprised? I said, yes, I'm surprised. And he said, well, we did, and we want you to take over the ball club.
But Gaston was reticent about the move.
I said, hey, it's not too often you can go to work and be happy in what you're doing. So I didn't want any parts of it. And he said, well, you know what, Cito? He says, I think you it, and if you could just do it on interim for a while for us, we appreciate it. And I said, well, okay, but just don't take too long.
Soon enough, the job was Gaston's, permanent. The new manager had the players focus on enjoying the game, and gradually the team's play returned to form. May, the Blue Jays were playing their last game at Exhibition Stadium, and who else but George Bell would close the book on the building with a game-winning home run. A new era was on the horizon.
Eye on the Diamond is brought to you by Aptiva, the new multimedia PC from IBM.
to Sky Dome brought with it a new sense of identity. Purists who had longed for an Ebbets or a Forbes blanched at the notion of a covered field, let alone one with a retractable top. But with a winning team, the new stadium became an attraction unto itself, and there were sellout crowds game after game. The Toronto Blue Jays had at last found a home in one of baseball's architectural marvels. Despite undergoing the trauma of a managerial change, the '89 Jays rode a stout bullpen and an opportune offense to a final weekend division showdown with Baltimore. Tom Henke closed out the Orioles with a ninth-inning strikeout. The Jays were champions again. Ensured a rendezvous with the powerful Oakland Athletics. The A's were led by the dizzying speed of Rickey Henderson. And when Jose Canseco's bat found the fifth level of Sky Dome in Game 4, it was clear. The Blue Jays were overmatched. It took only 5 short games to confirm that the club Pat Gillick had put together was no longer on its way up. But maybe the heartbreaking losses of '85 and '87 were as close as they would get. Their faces said it all.
I thought after the '89 season that probably we were going to have to make some changes. Some of our players, were getting older. Some of our players have been there for a while, and we just needed a change of pace. We thought about, hopefully, as I said, changing for the '90 season.
But Gillick was unable to make suitable changes. The media labeled him Stand Pat, and his team did little to dissuade the critics. With expectations so high, the Jays found themselves victims of second-guessing. Cito Gaston's managerial style was drawn into the harsh spotlight of judgment. But Dwayne Ward understood Gaston's style.
When he gets upset, you know that something's wrong. And he doesn't get upset too often. And about the only times you ever really see him get upset are at umpires, calls or whatnot. But I think the reason Cito's been so successful here is the fact that Pat Gillick, Gordash, and everybody in the Blue Jay organization has let Cito do it his way.
I wanted to be the type of manager that a player's manager, that hey, I understand when you make an error, you feel his work as bad as anyone in the ballpark. So one thing I want to do is guys relax. We're going to have fun. If we win a ball game, fine. We enjoy it. We forget it. Next day is a different day.
Gaston encouraged a loose atmosphere amongst the players, and many of the personal performances were indicative. College star John Olerud moved directly to the big leagues and established himself as a capable batsman. Fred McGriff became a legitimate Triple Crown threat. And third baseman Kelly Gruber drove in over 100 runs. But perhaps it is Dave Stieb who will be most remembered by 1990. Having twice lost no-hit bids in the final frame, on a sunny September afternoon in Cleveland, Stieb got his elusive no-hitter. He remains the only Blue Jay pitcher ever to throw one. Though Toronto made a spirited late-season run at the Eastern Division title, it would simply not be enough. The Jays, undone by a poor start, fell just short of the Boston Red Sox. During the season's final week that saw Toronto miss the playoffs, Pat Gillick knew he had to act on the changes he'd sensed were needed almost a year earlier. Any misconception that Gillick was a reluctant dealmaker would be forever vanquished. First, he put outfielder Junior Felix into a package that brought the Jays California's Devon White. Then, with George Bell moving as a free agent, Gillick's search for a replacement bat would find its destination in San Diego.
I said, we'd like to have right-handed power. When you think about moving Joe Carter.
The Padres GM, though hesitant at first, was soon intrigued.
He said, I'll deal Joe Carter, but I've got to have to have some power back to play first base. And I said, you mean Fred McGriff? And he said, yeah, if we dealt Joe, we'd have to have Fred.
McGriff was a rising star.
And I thought for a second, and I said, well, you know, that's a difficult trade for us to make. Would you consider, if we threw Tony Fernandez in, then would you consider putting Robbie Alomar? And his response was, well, that's a very interesting deal.
While initially only planning to chase Carter, Gillick was excited at the notion of getting Alomar, a player he believed had boundless potential.
I ran it by our guys, and there was some doubt, I think, in their minds. I said, my feeling was it just was a better fit for us.
Gillick knew that Fernandez was talking of retirement. After confirming the deal, he called his wife.
I said, I just want you to know that we're going to trade McGriff and Fernandez, and I didn't want you to have an accident if it came over the radio. And she said, you know, when are you coming home from Chicago? She says, why don't you get home before you do too many things detrimental to this team.
Joe Carter had been golfing when he was told the news.
The first thing I did, I just started laughing. I was like, yeah, right. I'm like, somebody's playing a joke on you. I said, they just got me. They wouldn't trade me, and especially Robbie. No way they'd trade him.
I felt sad in the beginning just because I don't knew where I was going to. I thought I was going to be a San Diego Padres forever. But good things happen for a reason.
The Jays were a good team, but with the insertion of the new personalities, they became the team to beat in the AL East. Roberto Alomar, Joe Carter, and Devon White became central figures in a new-look Blue Jay lineup. Pat Gillick had managed to change the face of baseball in Toronto in less than a week. It's not done yet. A Steve injury opened the door for Dominican Juan Guzman, who won 10 games after mid-year. Gillick acquired the knuckle-bowling Tom Candiotti to reinforce his rotation. Toronto was overcome with excitement as the Jays became the first club to draw 4 million fans in a season. Most of the 4 million, there seemed to be little that opponents could do but stand aside in the wake of the Blue Jay juggernaut. For the first time in their history, the Toronto Blue Jays had run away with the Eastern Division. Pat Gillick's acquisitions were at the heart of the team's success. Now there was only one team between the Jays and a trip to the World Series. Unfortunately, that team was the Minnesota Twins. Joe Carter won't soon forget the drubbing the Blue Jays took.
That was a feeling that you don't want to experience ever again. And guys went home and worked their butts off. They got ready to play, and when we came to spring training, there was no fun in games. I mean, it was seriousness. And I think everybody would tell you that we had one goal in mind.
The Jays dipped into free agency, luring future Hall of Famers Jack Morris and Dave Winfield to Toronto.
I knew that when I joined that team, and I said, we got the best team, the most talented team in baseball, and if everyone just does what they're capable of doing, we're going to win it.
The veteran Winfield became the club's unofficial leader.
Dave's a guy, you watch him every day, and you can't help but go out there and want to do things like him. It's like a Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan. You're a great ball player, but it's what you do to the other players around you. You make them perform at another level that they had not played at, throughout their career.
David Cone was added late in the year, giving the Blue Jays a pitching staff that was the envy of the American League. The club displayed a cool confidence in clinching their third division championship in 4 years. Having been humiliated by Oakland in '89, the taunting of Dennis Eckersley was all the inspiration the Jays needed. One inning later, Roberto Alomar's dramatic home run took Eckersley and the A's all but out of the series. The Jays had their first pennant in 6 games. The Atlanta Braves unabashedly promoted themselves as America's team, and in facing Canada's own Blue Jays, the World Series set up baseball's first international classic. A tight Tom Graven-Jack Morris pitching affair was eventually settled by a Damon Berryhill 3-run homer. The Braves took Game 1. The Blue Jays were left looking for their own hero.
Eye on the Diamond is brought to you by Thrifty Car Rental, historically known for low rates.
Canada will not soon forget the upside-down flag of Game 2. In concert with Atlanta's Chop Chorus, the resolve of the Jays was hardened. With David Cone pitching, Toronto figured to have a good chance of sending the series back home even. Not prove easy. It was somewhat ironic that former Jays Bobby Cox and Jimmy Williams were now in the enemy dugout. For Dwayne Ward, a one-time Brave, the opposite was true.
I told myself that I wanted a ring before the Atlanta Braves got a ring.
Ward pitched well in relief, but with the Jays down a run, reserve Ed Sprague was called on to pinch hit for him in the 9th.
I didn't think about the World Series. I didn't think about first at bat.
There was 1 out, 1 on.
I can actually remember it's about as focused as I've been probably at the plate. I knew I hit it good. It was just one of those ones you really don't feel. The ball was in the lights, and then I looked down and I saw Deion Sanders' back had been turned, was turned to the wall. So. At that point, I knew it was gone.
Ed Sprague's home run gave the Jays a 5-4 win. Toronto had found its hero. The series was tied at 1. A loud Sky Dome greeted the Jays, spurred on in part by Dave Winfield.
When it came down to playoffs and World Series and things like that, I just noted that we needed their participation, I think, to go further than we ever gone before.
If Atlanta had the chop, Toronto had Winfield wants noise. The battle cry exhorted the Jays and their fans to new heights in the third game. The pinnacle was Devon White's catch of a deep fly ball in the fourth inning. White's spectacular snare led to what replays later revealed was a triple play. The Jays were inspired.
We never doubted that we could come back and win. I mean, we knew that this was going to be our year.
Though the game remained tight, momentum was clearly moving to the Blue Jays. When Kelly Gruber's home run tied the game in the eighth, the close calls began to break in Toronto's favor. With the bases loaded and only one out, Candy Maldonado drove in Roberto Alomar with the winning run. Jays went up 2 games to 1.
It was a moment to remember. It was great for me personally, for the team, for the fans.
The game that I started, you know, was probably the biggest thrill of my life still. To get a chance to pitch a World Series game in your home stadium.
Having only come out of the bullpen in the ALCS, Key pitched masterfully in Game 4. He would turn the ball over to Dwayne Ward in the 8th, surrendering but 1 run. Key's next start in Skydome would see him in Yankee pinstripes.
The tip of the hat and all that was mainly just appreciation to the fans and just saying thank you to them, and you know, not knowing at the time that it might be my last time as a Blue Jay coming off that field, but as it turned out, it was.
The Jays had a stranglehold on the series. Now, with Jack Morris poised, the Braves would be lucky to see another game at Fulton County Stadium. But Atlanta proved resilient. Their offense exploded. Facing a precarious situation, Cito Gaston recalls having a quiet moment with Jimmy Williams.
I had to go out to the mound. I came back by Jimmy, and we had nobody out. I mean, we're in trouble. And I just kind of looked at Jimmy and said, hey, this is great, huh? Just kind of smiled. I think he looked at me like I was crazy. But it was fun.
Lonnie Smith's grand slam sent the teams back to Dixie with the Jays up 3 games to 2. Maybe the Braves were lucky after all. Toronto remained relaxed and confident. Game 6, on the night of October the 24th, became the most watched baseball game ever in Canada. And like most of the series, the game was close. Carried a 2-1 lead into the last of the 9th, only to see Atlanta battle back to even the game. Dave Winfield put Toronto in front 2 innings later. In a career filled with big moments, it is his swing in Atlanta that still lingers.
To hit a double and stand in the middle of the opposition's field and silence and hush the 50,000 people there. And all I recall is there were 2 or 3 or 4 enclaves of people who were rooting for Toronto around the stadium, the only people making noise. Everything else was hushed.
Mere moments later, it was over. The Toronto Blue Jays had become world champions. celebration was just beginning. It had taken Pat Gillick and the Blue Jays 16 years, but they finally had their championship. Winning the World Series will always be treasured.
I've played many years. I've never had a perfect year, but that was probably from start to finish the best year in toto. Add everything up. Relationships with players, relationship with the community, good season, and a manager I really enjoyed playing for.
I just had some good guys that were very proud and very happy to be in the World Series, and they went out and proved it, and all the negative things that has been written about this ball club, they went out to prove that all those people were wrong, and these guys did.
It was one that I don't know if I could describe it. It had every type of emotion or imaginable embodied into that one moment when the final out took place at first base.
For the injured Dave Stieb, it cast a somewhat different feeling.
It was bittersweet. I mean, it was great to have been a part of that, even if it was on the bench. And it was great to get a ring, but it was tough to just watch and not go out there and play. It just, I guess it was the typical end to a Dave Stieb story.
Fan response in Canada was overwhelming. The streets of Toronto were lined with hundreds of thousands. Inside Skydome, there were speeches and tributes from players and management. And then,
if you'll all turn around, right above the Jumbotron, unveiled 1992 World Champions, Toronto Blue Jays. Stand up, give them an applause. We won, noise. I love you.
Eye on the Diamond is brought to you by Quality's Don Cherry Rock'em Sock'em 6 and Quality's Ultimate Party Mix 94.
What it comes down is the business of baseball. I understand business. I don't particularly like the way all that went down, and we're not going to cast any blame here. Not then and not now, but they know that I said it would be great to play here a couple more years.
We wanted Winfield to come back for '93, and we went down to New York for the expansion draft.
But Winfield wouldn't be coming back. The two sides had trouble agreeing on terms. The club wanted to go short. Winfield's agent sought a longer deal.
I think Jeff and David had some different ideas. In fact, they had some much different ideas than we did. And right then when we left there, we thought that we might have to go in another direction.
That direction was Milwaukee and longtime brewer Paul Molitor.
I wanted to go to a place that had a chance to win. Toronto had posted 10 consecutive winning seasons, which was as important to me as was the fact that they had come off a world championship. And I talked to current and former Blue Jays about how the organization not only went about their business in trying to win and their commitment, but also the way they treated their players as men, the way they treated their families, the way they tried to make it a positive environment for players to play in.
But in Toronto, Molitor inherited the burden of replacing the popular Dave Winfield.
I did feel pressure to come in and try to replace Dave's, fill in for Dave's shoes, which had been very big ones to fill considering his contributions in '92. I knew it would be a difficult situation.
Molitor's was the most visible change, but there were many. to the world champions.
In 1993, we lost 14 players from 92. I mean, that was one of the biggest turnovers Toronto's ever had. And people are going, well, how do they expect to win without a team that they had before that won? You know, they got 14 new faces over on this ball club.
Not the least of which was Dwayne Ward inheriting Tom Henke's job as closer. The other key move brought Dave Stewart to Toronto. His contribution would extend far beyond the mound. With the loss of Key and Cone, Jay pitching was expected to falter, but the emergence of Pat Henkin stabilized the rotation. An injury to Dick Schofield found Tony Fernandez back in Toronto. He had a brilliant season, knocking in 5 runs in his first game alone. John Olerud flirted with a .400 average before winning the batting title. And Blue Jays went 1-2-3 in the batting race. Pat Gillick's biggest deal had self-proclaimed superstar Rickey Henderson join the Jays. It was a curious fit.
I don't know if Rickey ever felt really too comfortable here. Maybe he'd been wearing the A's uniform for too long, or, you know, for a little bit, hard is it to believe. I thought he might be a little bit intimidated.
Despite his history in the game, Henderson would be in the shadow of others in Toronto. The Jays didn't mind. They were on their way to the World Series. There was a brief brush with Chicago's White Sox in the ALCS. But soon enough, the Blue Jays were engaging Philadelphia in October's Classic. The Blue Jays took 2 of the first 3 before a memorable 4th game. There's no understatement to say the pitchers got roughed up. In more than 4 hours of play in a steady, cold drizzle, the teams collected 32 hits and 29 runs. Toronto rallying twice from 5-run deficits, won 15-14. By the time the series returned to Skydome, the Jays led 3 games to 2. When Len Dykstra's 7th inning homer put the Phils in front, it looked like there'd be a deciding game. The Blue Jays had one last chance. With Mitch Williams throwing, anything could happen. And this night it did. A Henderson walk and Paul Molitor's single were on base with 1 out.
And before that game, I had told my wife, Diana, I said, something's good is going to happen today. Something good is going to happen today. The stage is set. But this is a time when you want to come through, and I'm going to win a ball game right here. And he throws me 2 straight balls. 2-0, I said, no way I'm swinging. No way. Why does that always happen? You take a pitch that's always down the middle of the plate. He threw me a slider that I swung feebly at. I'm going, man, I didn't see that at all. I said, if he throws it again, I said, I'm in trouble. I immediately looked up, and I couldn't see it because of the lights. And I saw Peter Caviglia running back, and I'm looking at him going, this ball may be out of here. It may be out of here.
And another team set out in search of a third straight title.
It don't matter how many they take, they always pick the worst one.
Baseball's a funny game. With big money at stake, players change uniforms at a disorienting rate. Diamonds glitter with former Jays.
Petty, you go their way? Yeah. You? You? Check the bat.
He had a different approach to that ball now. See what Larry's done there?
Practice didn't make perfect for the defending champions. Trips to the mound were more frequent. The pitching and hitting less effective. Gillick's successor, Gord Ash, understands why.
We have to be very aware that there is a cyclical nature in sport, and you're not always going to be world champions, but I think you can always be competitive.
Down to 3-2. Pat Gillick fully realizes what the shortcomings of the club are right now, but again, and it's been the philosophy and the...
Though disappointed in their performance in this Pat Gillick's final year, the Blue Jays hold steadfast to their original formula for winning.
They can give you some good productive years when they get there. There's a swing and a foul off.
It's going to be different, and it's going to be a challenge for those of us that remain here to continue on in the blueprint that he's prepared for us.
The June amateur draft finds the organization looking to the future, more so than in past seasons.
Houston's selection is number 764.
In 1994, it seems somehow appropriate that this year's hidden gem will be playing elsewhere.
Toronto selection is number 982, Kevin Witt.
But when it comes to building tomorrows, the Jays are never short on good ideas. There are few men in baseball with a passion for the game like Pat Gillick.
Are you switch hitting too? No? Just right-handed.
Through the years, he's made countless trips to the Dominican Republic, examining young talent, working with the grassroots. There is no greater challenge than projecting a young player into the future.
The only way we can catch up with you people.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys been in business too long.
There is no secret to his success.
Work hard. That's what you have to do. Just show a good work ethic, work hard, and you're going to be successful because time goes by very quickly. So good luck to each and every one of you. And again, thanks again from the Blue Jays to the Dominican Republic.
With Gillick's guidance, the Blue Jay legacy has extended from the Dominican Republic to go throughout most of Canada. Today, scores of young Canadians play baseball whose parents never did. When the Jays play their annual game with Canada's Baseball Institute, most of Medicine Hat is there.
Oh! Pull it! Pull the ball! Big Carlos! Oh! Pulled it! You pulled it! You pulled it!
There are professional sports teams in Canada that have broad appeal, but none of them are supported as widely as the Blue Jays. On this day, the score doesn't matter. Instead, it gives the fans a moment with their team and affords a chance for many of the Jays to understand how profoundly they've affected the country in which they play. In a season where hopes have grown dim, the Jays continue to share an enthusiasm for the game and a closeness that only a team can know. Through the disappointment, there is solace in the knowledge that their closer is not playing, that their offense is still potent, pitching is still young. But anything can happen in sport. '94 has seen injuries, aching pain, young players not ready for prime time. there's always next year. At least that was until August the 12th. Now, with owners and players at an impasse, it is the fans who feel baseball's loss of innocence most. But despite what the cynics may say, baseball will be back. Theirs is a concise history, but one charged with a drama that captured the heart of a nation. And though Pat Gillick moves on, it is certain the Blue Jay legacy will endure.
We've had tremendous support since 1976, and I think that's what's nice about the Blue Jays. I think this is, even though it's a privately owned company, the Toronto Blue Jays, I sort of feel like it's a community-owned ball club, or even a country-owned ball club, because I think everybody and everyone, right down to the fans, are involved.
If you look at what they've drawn with the new stadium, it speaks for itself what Canada, not just Toronto, but what Canada really thinks of that ball club.
In Toronto, I become more caring and more loving about baseball just because the fans are there.
But until I'm dead and gone, I think they'll always be showing the home run that helped win the World Series. That's something that I can't live down now, but it's something I'll look back on and say, yeah, for once I was a part of something that was great.
I'm very proud in what I have accomplished. And when I say what I have, along with players, along with people I work with, because none of those things you could do without those people.
There's something in the simplicity of baseball that cuts to the very soul. Once the game has touched you, whether in the stands or on the field, you're never the same.
I miss the camaraderie of the clubhouse. That's what fantasy camp gives me a little bit of. The home runs, of course, have gotten a little bit longer. The pitchers have thrown shutouts a little more frequently. But I miss the getting together with the guys.
This is TSN.